thousands of Afghan citizens who worked as translators and interpreters for U.S. forces during the war. Translators and interpreters who are still in Afghanistan now and whose lives are at grave risk as U.S. forces leave. They, of course, are targets for the Taliban, specifically because they helped American forces. Those translators are eligible to get special visas that would allow them to start new lives in the United States, the country for which they sacrificed so much, the country that promised to keep them safe if they provided that help, and the country that now owes them the chance to start anew here because of what they did for our soldiers. We have been waiting for the White House and the military, the administration more broadly, to announce what the plan is to get these translators out because time is so short. Today, we finally got a substantive announcement from the White House about that. This is from a senior White House official, quote, "At President Biden's direction, the United States is launching Operation Allies Refuge to support relocation flights for interested and eligible Afghan nationals and their families who supported the U.S. and our partners in Afghanistan and are in the pipeline to get special visas to come to the U.S. Flights out of Afghanistan for those allies who are already in the pipeline will begin the last week of this month, the last week of July. For operational security, we won't have additional details on when flights will depart, but we will meet President Biden's commitment to begin flights this month." You know, all of those details in the announcement give us more information than we had before, but, you know, there's still a lot left out. And as they say, it's understandable that some of these details are left out on purpose for operational security. But the basics still sort of loom as unanswered questions. Where are these translators going to go once they leave Afghanistan? In addition to the question of where they're going, there's the question of how they'll get there. The only flights out of Afghanistan right now are out of the capital city of Kabul, but Afghanistan is a big country and internal travel is not that easy. This is interesting. Today, the Association of Wartime Allies, which has worked very hard on this issue to get the translators out, they put out a report that says nearly half of the U.S. allies, these Afghan translators and interpreters, nearly half of them who are still in Afghanistan right now live in areas outside of Kabul, which raises the question of how they get to Kabul to get on one of these flights. They could have to pass through Taliban-controlled checkpoints and Taliban-controlled areas in order to get there. Is there also a plan for getting those allies to safety if that requires internal travel within Afghanistan to get to these military or otherwise U.S. airlift flights out of Kabul? Is that going to happen? Are people who are not in Kabul expected to get themselves there on their own? Also, who's eligible for this? How many Afghan translators is this operation going to try and save? The statement from the White House today is careful to point out that this operation is focused on people who are already in the pipeline in terms of being approved to come to the U.S. For the past few weeks, the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan was closed altogether because of a COVID outbreak, which means they haven't been open for anyone in that country who wanted to apply for that visa. The U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan just announced this week that they were reopening the embassy just this week, specifically for U.S. allies who want to apply for these special visas to get out and come to the U.S. Will people who were only able to start applying this week and in the coming days be part of this operation? Like I said, there's a lot of questions still to be answered. And in terms of saving lives and doing what is our moral responsibility here, all the devils are in all of the details. Joining us now is somebody who's been working on this issue and watching it very, very closely, Major Matt Zeller. He's a U.S. Army veteran. He's the co-founder of the group No One Left Behind, which advocates for bringing the Afghan interpreters safely to the U.S. Major Zeller, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let me just ask you to update me. Let me ask you if I missed anything, if I've summarized what we know as of today as you understand it.
You hit all the points very, very well. I would only add the following, which is, why didn't we do this before we withdrew our forces? We have made it so much harder on ourselves by trying to do it now at the 11th hour. 4 months ago, we had all of the assets in place to evacuate people in the areas that you're talking about. Last night, I was interviewing a gentleman for our podcast, Wartime Allies, by the name of Sharif. We'd spoken with him in a previous episode. This gentleman has suffered everything. His mom, dad, and siblings have all been murdered by the Taliban at some point in the last decade. It's now down to him and his wife and his kids. He had fled from Kandahar to Kabul when he realized that he had left all of his documents back in Kandahar. Now, the reason why he had fled Kandahar was because the Taliban 2 weeks ago murdered his dad at his doorstep, and they just ran out of the house. So a couple of days ago, he did the impossible. He flew back to Kandahar by bumming a ride on an Afghan military transport, which is the only flights flying in the country. He gets into Kandahar. He gets back to his house. He gets his documents. He's on a friend's motorcycle yesterday trying to drive to the airport in Kandahar when the Afghan military gets attacked by the Taliban on the road that connects the airport to the city. The Afghan military gets overrun and killed. The Taliban then turn on him. He flees on motorbike. They shoot him off the motorbike. He gets injured, and he's calling me from a friend's house, telling me that at this point, his only option was to hide and disguise himself like a woman, hide in a burqa, and hire a taxi and attempt to drive from Kandahar back to Kabul, which, there's got to be, 30 Taliban checkpoints at this point between Kandahar and Kabul. This guy had been an interpreter for the SEALs, for the Army Special Forces at the most elite levels. He is absolutely a dead man if they catch him. And he has already had his visa denied once in the past because somewhere in his file it says that he has some derogatory information that he's never been allowed to see. He can't contest, and he has no means of being able to effectively appeal his case. So again, we have no idea. Is this guy going to be put on a plane if he somehow makes it back to Kabul? Why didn't we pull these people out at the time when we had the means to do it, Rachel? That's the thing that I keep asking myself about this.
Now that the U.S. government says that they are trying to do this, as you say, very late in the process with many fewer assets on the ground and with the danger that much more heightened with the passage of time, the way they talked about doing it today, what they said about the structure by which they're trying to do it, how would you have them improve it? How would you, given that it's happening now, even though you say it should have happened before, what else would you have them do that they didn't announce today?
I would first off tell people, where exactly are folks going, right? People, why aren't they, first of all, just bringing everybody to Guam is beyond me. I get that there's some concern that they don't want to have nefarious people somehow end up in the United States and then we couldn't deport them. But, at the end of the Vietnam War, we didn't screen anybody. We just put them on boats. We put about 130,000 people on boats and we brought them to Guam because it seems to be, at least back then, we had some type of moral content and character that we're lacking now. We have all the same legal authorities to do that, which we did then now, but we don't seem to be wanting to exercise them. The other thing I would be really concerned about is how are we going to communicate this message to the Afghans without inciting a panic? The White House seems to keep saying that they don't want to see something similar to Saigon. Okay, well, how are you going to communicate that to Afghans? Because right now, all you've done is incite panic, that nobody knows where in the process they qualify. You raised it so well. If you just applied for a visa this week, are you going to get on a plane or is it at some point later? Right now, I had an individual who wrote me from Helmand. I don't even know if this person's still alive at this point, but a couple of weeks ago, they wrote me and they said, hey, I've been serving for an interpreter for 22 months. Currently, the qualification to get a visa is 24 months. The U.S. Army just left the base I'm on. What am I supposed to do now? I'm 2 months short. Does that person get to get on a plane, even though we know they won't qualify? And by the way, that time standard was written by Stephen Miller when he was one of the staffers for Jeff Sessions before Jeff Sessions left to become Trump's first AG. It was one of his parting gifts on the way out of the Senate. He wrote it in 2015, and the deal that was made was that everyone had to agree to this larger time increase if they agreed to that, would he allow for more visas to be passed that year. I would love to see the Congress get rid of that standard.
Major Matt
we don't
Zeller,
have time.
U.S. Army veteran, co-founder of the group No One Left Behind. Matt, obviously this is evolving and we're still getting more information out of the administration as we can. I know that you, as you say, are not only following this closely, but you're very in close touch with the people who are directly affected. We're going to have you back in coming days to keep talking about this as we learn more and as this press starts to hit the ground.